Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas. This is how to create a Grand Theft Auto style game in Unity, and welcome to episode 36. In this tutorial, we're going to create that little cutscene because we've got our starting point for the mission, but we need to know what exactly we're doing when we meet Tony B. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well. Stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So a word of warning before we get into this, there is some terrible voice acting once again in this tutorial, and I apologize for the awfulness of it. So one thing I would like to do, which I kind of should have done quite a while ago, is if we're heading to that starting script, the AA opening one, there is one extra line of code that I would like to add. And that's turning off the fade in, because if you see here, we fade in, we set it on, but we don't ever turn it off, and we don't need it to stay on. So what I'm going to do is, after we waited for that 4 seconds, just before global hints and hint number is equal to 1, let's have fade in dot set active false semicolon and resave that script. Reason we're doing that is because we're going to use it once again for this next little section. And essentially what's going to happen is, as well as spawning Tony Bono over here, we're also going to spawn a trigger area, which is going to be essentially what is the little cutscene trigger. But what I would like to do is I want to add some subtitles once again to this. So I'm going to actually save that scene and head back to our original scene, which is here, and it is intro scene, I believe. Is that the one? Because in our canvas here, we have the subtitles text, and I want to copy that text, head back to our open world scene, and I want to paste it here. So rather than recreate subtitles again, I just want to put it in here, and let's drag it into the canvas, and I'm going to actually turn it back on and double click on it. So the first time subtitles are ever going to be seen in this particular scene, at least for us right now, is going to be this cutscene. And the words that Tony is going to say to us is, I need you to drive to Summertown and meet Carlos there. He'll tell you what to do. And obviously we can change this later on. For now, we're just going to have the subtitles text as it is, but once again, this needs to be above any fade in or fade out. So let's make sure that's there below the minimap, and let's stop that from being seen. So let's turn it off up there. So once again, it comes down to a sequence of events. What's going to happen is we're going to have another camera which renders Tony, just being idle there, and on screen it's going to say that line. And then it's also going to be spoken, and it'll fade into that and then fade back out to where we are. So we need to make sure we get that sequence of events correct. So first and foremost, let's head back to where Tony is, and let's add a trigger area around him so as we can walk into it. So right click on Tony and 3D object and cube, and this cube will obviously be the trigger area. So let's set it to roughly whereabouts we want to be able to walk up to him. So scale is going to be probably 5 and about 3. So within this general area is where we want to be able to trigger Tony and his scene. So let's turn off mesh renderer and turn on his trigger, and let's rename this to mission trigger. So now let's get the camera set. Now what we can do is we have a camera in here already, and I believe it is actually just named camera because I think it's that camera that pans down. So we're going to use that same camera. So let's duplicate that camera and bring it so we can basically look at Tony. It doesn't need the animator, so what I think we'll do is actually remove the animator on there. Needs the post-processing, so we'll keep that on. Let's bring it over here. And again, I think it's kind of up to you how you want to really portray this. I mean, it is your game after all, so how you do this whole bit is entirely up to you. So I am going to basically have the camera sort of looking up at Tony just a little bit. So let's pan it upwards and across a little on the Y. Something like that, I think. So let's call this Tony Mission Cam. And I want to place that inside Tony himself. So somewhere probably there should do it. And then turn it off because we don't need it to render. But that's all in position now for us to get this done accurately. So let's write the next section of the script. So let's go to our scripts folder and let's go to missions, and we'll create another script, which is going to be a C# script, and we'll have this as M001_A. So you can see the kind of progress we're making. So the next section would be B, and the last section would be C. And then mission 2 would be M002, and then A, B, C. So, like I say, it comes down to a sequence of events again, and we need to establish what kind of things we need in this sequence. So first and foremost, we're going to need that camera. So public, game object, and we'll just have Tony Cam. Semicolon. Next, we're going to need our player. So public game object, the player. We're also going to need our main camera turned off as well, because I do believe, in fact, let me just find the main camera in the hierarchy. Just make sure we are. So contract killer, fake, and the other main camera is, I can't remember, it's in here, isn't it? Contract killer, because it's on rotate cam there. So we need that object turned off as well, because we don't need that. But then again, that's all within our player, so I guess that should be okay. So we don't need any other cameras for that. The player is just fine. Next, we're going to need the fade in. So public game object fade in, and then public game object fade out, semicolon. We're going to need the subtitles text. So public game object, and it'll be sub text, semicolon. We're also going to need the voice line as well. So public audio, not audio behavior, audio source. And we'll call this Tony line. So I think that's pretty much everything we're going to need. We don't need void start, we don't need void update. So let's create the sequence of events. So I enumerator, and we'll have this Tony meet, open close bracket, open curly bracket. And first thing we're going to want to do is fade out dot set active true, semicolon. And then we're going to wait for 1 second. So yield return new, wait for seconds, and in brackets 1. So at that point, we then need to turn Tony's camera on. We also need to turn the player off. So TonyCam dot set active true, then the player dot set active false. So after that, we then need to turn fade in on, but I want to wait just half a second at this point before we do anything, simply because it just gives it that little extra realism. We don't want to fade in, instantly fade out again. So if we wait for 0.5f, then at that point we will say fade in, that's right, dot set active true, and we'll also say fade out dot set active false, so it turns that off. And we will wait for about 1.5 seconds, and after that we will turn fade in off again. So both the fades are now turned off. So fade in dot set active false. So now what we can do is display the subtitle text as well as play the line spoken by Tony. So subtext dot set active true semicolon and Tony line dot play open close bracket. The line, I think off memory when I recorded it, is about 6.5 seconds long, maybe 7. So we'll stick with 7 just in case and see how it goes. So we will yield return new, wait for seconds 7. After 7 seconds, we will say subtext dot set active false, so we turn it off. We'll then wait for another 0.5 second, and then at that point we will repeat this process here. So fade out and then wait for a second. However, this needs to be inverted now. So Tony Cam needs to go off and the player needs to go on. So those two lines of code here, reversed, and then the player is back on. And when the player is back on, we need to repeat these lines right here. So what's happening here is when we set the player back on and with fade, in fact, what I will do is I will take that. In fact, I don't think we need it at that point. That's what I'm thinking. So we might take that away and have this as 1.5. So then at that point, the player turns back on, Tony turns off, fade in starts, fade out disappears. We then fade in, and then after 1.5 seconds, the fade in also gets turned off. So that sequence of events is complete. But we also need to say at the very start of it, this game object get component spiky brackets box collider open close bracket enabled equals false. The reason being, once again, because we don't want to repeat this process over and over and over and be stuck in an infinite loop. Final thing is void on trigger enter. It does not need to be private. And we will say start coroutine and then brackets Tony meet open close bracket semicolon and save. So that is our sequence of events for this short little cutscene that we're creating. So if we head back into Unity, we're also going to need to bring in that line that we're going to speak. And this line needs to be on Tony himself. So on Tony, if we right click, create empty. Now I think this particular model is only ever going to say one line, so I'm thinking we can probably have it here. So Tony voice is there. Let's head to our audio folder and voice, and let's create a new folder and call this one 03 mission. So I'm going to bring this in, and if you really want this, it will be on the website on the downloads and assets section, but don't be too surprised by its awfulness. So let's drag and drop Tony B's line onto him and untick play on awake. And mission trigger now has to contain the script that we wrote. So let's go to missions and drag and drop M001A onto mission trigger. And then Tony Cam, let's apply. The player is contract killer. So make sure you get the right one there. Don't make the same mistakes I've been doing by making things work with the fake one. Fade in is somewhere here, right there. Fade out is right there. Subtext is the subtitles text, and Tony line is his voice right there. So let's turn Tony off, save, and fingers crossed this works first time. I'd be surprised if this works first time. But as I always say, you'll find yourself going back and forth all these things, trying to correct things and make them better and better. So don't be surprised if you end up spending a couple of hours trying to get this just right. So let's get going. Start the mission. Come meet me, South West Meadows, Tony B. And we're on our way. Now I think the UI may also end up...
I need you to drive to Summertown and meet Carlos there. He'll tell you what to do.
Cool. So, it looks like something has gone a little bit astray there because our footsteps have disappeared. So we may change how this is working. Sound effects, so they are there. So what I'm thinking is actually turning off just the control script. So let me quickly check what happens if we turn off our control script. I'm thinking rather, because it'll also give us the opportunity to actually not be able to move outside of the area we're supposed to be. So yeah, we cannot move. So I think we should probably change this around just a little bit. So instead of having this half a second there, I'm going to add that half a second to this one here. And where we've got the player.setActive false, what we're going to do is change that to the player.getComponent char control close bracket dot enabled equals false, and take that, and we will also have that there, except we will have true at that point, so we re-enable our controls. Now obviously we've got to deal with some of our UI as well to get it off screen and then back on screen, so let's deal with that. So I think it's the same things that we dealt with the AA section. So if we go to AA opening, and it was these, wasn't it? So I'm actually going to copy those 4 lines of code, cache count, ammo count, hint box, minimap, and place them in M001A. And they are going to be after the fade out down the bottom there. And they will, there we go, they will go red because we haven't actually entered those in yet. But we also need to turn them off up here. And again, I think if you have any problems with this script, I will put it on the website if you head over there. So they all need to turn to false. And that one. So now we need to declare those variables. So public game object cache count, public game object ammo count semicolon, and public game object hint box, and finally public game object mini map. So now we shouldn't have any errors in there at all. So let's save that script, head back into Unity, and let it compile, and there we go. So let's go to the mission trigger and let's add those UI elements in there. So hint box is there, ammo count is there, cache count, and minimap. Let's resave, and now let's try out this entire sequence, and it should be a-okay. So just thinking, is this going to work as intended? I think it should, because we end up turning the controls back on, don't we? So let's head over here, get our mission. And we need to find Tony. Where's Tony? Oh, there he is. Sorry, Tony.
I need you to drive to Summertown and meet Carlos there. He'll tell you what to do.
Cool. Everything working as intended, and all the UI is back on our screen. Excellent. So not Carlos. Tony is telling us to drive to Summertown, but there's a couple of things that we need to kind of assess first. So next tutorial, what I want to do is I want to work on an ammo limit, because at the moment it tells us we've got I think we set 15, but we can actually fire infinite ammo here. So I think we need to set a limit on it, and we also need to be able to collect ammo. So what I want to try and do is have a little ammo crate somewhere on the map that we can walk into and collect some ammo, because when we pick up the gun I want to have no ammo. We've got to go find some from somewhere. So we're going to work on ammo limits and picking up ammo in the next tutorial. So until then, guys, thank you very much for watching.